Imagine a machine so colossal, it could haul more timber in one go than a fleet of ordinary log trucks, heavier than a battle tank, powered by not one but two roaring hearts. This was no ordinary truck. This was the Butler Mark V, a Frankenstein's monster of steel and fury, built to conquer the impenetrable forests of the Pacific Northwest. In the 1960s, when the logging boom turned ancient giants into gold, one question haunted the industry. How do you move mountains of wood from hellish terrain without breaking? The Pacific P16 was king, mass-produced, reliable, with its mighty V12 engine hauling loads that crushed lesser rigs. But whispers spread of a forgotten titan that dwarfed it. A custom beast from Souk, British Columbia, crafted by the mad genius Claude Butler. Could one man's obsession really outmuscle the industry standard? Or was it doomed from the start? It all began in the shadow of the arms race ripping through the woods. Post-World War II, America's appetite for lumber exploded. Houses, ships, paper, the forests of Washington and British Columbia bled trees at a frantic pace. Roads, non-existent. Terrain, a nightmare of mud, roots, and 45-degree inclines. Standard trucks flipped, engines seized, drivers vanished into ravines. The Pacific P16, built by Pacific Car and Foundry, changed the game. Introduced in the late 1950s, its 567 cubic inch V12 Detroit diesel bellowed 400 horsepower, spinning planetary axles that clawed through sludge. It carried 100,000 pounds like a workhorse, reliable enough for fleets. But Butler saw weakness. Reliable? He'd growl. I want unstoppable. By 1965, the boom peaked. Log prices soared, but so did the stakes. A single hauler breakdown meant thousands lost. Enter Claude Butler, a local engineer with a welder's torch and a grudge against limits. In his souk yard, amid the salt air and sawdust stench, he dreamed bigger. Why one engine when two could rule? Drawing from war surplus, tank treads inspiring his axles, surplus diesels from army trucks, Butler forged the Mark V, not for show, for war. The need was primal. Loggers felled cedars 20 feet around, Douglas firs piercing the clouds. Cutting them was art, moving them, apocalypse. Conventional rigs maxed at 60 tons. Slopes devoured tires. Winter froze differentials solid. Butler's answer, excess. Twin engines, often a front-mounted Caterpillar D343 V8 paired with a rear Cummins or Detroit, delivering over 700 horsepower combined. Not synced perfectly, mind you. They'd snarl independently, shaking the cabin like an earthquake. But torque? Biblical. Aixo's Planetaria's triple strength, borrowed from heavy artillery haulers, multiplied force tenfold. Chassis. Boxed steel, 4 inches thick, longer than a city bus. Why so extreme? Because the forests demanded it. Picture the Cassidy Valley. Bogs swallowing semis whole. Hairpin turns where gravity plotted murder. The P16 won contracts by the dozen. Simple, parts everywhere. But Butler's Mark V? It loaded 150 tons. Logs piled 30 feet high, swaying like a drunken colossus. Drivers swore it laughed at mud that buried competitors. First run, 1967, 120,000 pounds up a 30% grade. The P16 nearby spun futilely. Crowds gathered, jaws dropped. Diesel thunder echoed for miles, black smoke blotting the sun. The air reeked of hot oil and victory. Yet from day one, darkness loomed. Complexity bred chaos. 2 engines meant double the fuel. 10 miles per gallon? Try 3, sinking throttles? A pilot's black art. One driver recounted. Front motor surges, rear lags. You're fishtailing a dinosaur. Parts? Custom. Breakdowns in the wild? Hours to jury rig. But power. Pure, raw power. Shamed the P16, hauling what fleets couldn't dream. This Leviathan didn't just move wood. It redefined possible. But as it roared into legend, cracks formed. Was Butler's monster too brutal for its own good? The real test awaited. Not in loads, but in survival. To understand the Butler Mark V's savage supremacy, you must dissect its brutal anatomy. This wasn't a truck assembled on a factory line. It was a Leviathan welded in defiance, every girder screaming excess. At its core, the The powertrain, a dual-hearted apocalypse. Claude Butler rejected the Pacific P16 single V12 Detroit diesel, potent at 400 horses, sure, but tame. Instead, he mated two beasts. Forward, often a Caterpillar D343, an 8-cylinder monster displacing 638 cubic inches, forged for earth movers. Peaking at 425 horsepower, it gulped diesel at 80 gallons an hour under load, its turbocharger whining like a banshee in heat. But one heart wasn't enough. Aft of the cab, or sometimes tandem in a booster setup, lurked a second soul. A Cummins NT855 inline-6 or another Detroit 12V71. Combined output? Over 750 horsepower, raw and unfiltered. No sophisticated electronics synced them. Throttles linked by steel cables. Drivers juggling two levers like a deranged organist. Surge the front, the nose lunges, lag the rear, and the tail fishtails through muck. The cacophony, deafening. Twin exhaust stacks belched symphonies of thunder, shaking pine needles from century-old firs a half-mile away. Hot oil stench mingled with pine sap, a perfume of conquest. Transmission? A spectacle of savagery. Butler bolted a twin-disc clutch pack, double the plates of a standard rig, to a custom Allison planetary gearbox. 10 forward speeds, but low-range crawl was the star, ratios plunging to 1:100, turning 750 horses into torque that could split bedrock. Impact? This behemoth idled at 40,000 foot-pounds, enough to yank a loaded P16 backward up a hill. Drivers felt it in their bones, the cab pulsing like a war drum, floorboards flexing underfoot. Now the underbelly, axles from hell. The P16 boasted planetary hubs, tough, multiplying torque via epicyclic gears. Butler tripled down. Front, a single steerable Rockwell axle, beefed with 30-inch tires wrapped in aggressive lugs. Rear, tandem triples, 6 axles total, each with outboard planetary reductions. Gears nested like Russian dolls. Primary sun gear driving planetaries that spun 18-inch hubs. Each wheel delivered 10,000 pounds-feet at the tread. Borrowed from M60 tank transporters and surplus D8 dozers, these weren't road axles. They were siege weapons. Mud? They churned it to soup. Rocks? Crushed to gravel? Suspension? None, really. Leaf springs thick as I-beams, soaked in grease, bowing but never breaking under 200,000 pounds dynamic load. Chassis, the unbreakable spine. 40 feet stem to stern, boxed from 4-inch plate steel. Half-inch walls, welded with oxyacetylene fury. Weighing 45,000 pounds empty, it flexed like a suspension bridge over ravines. Bunk design? A fortress. Sidewalls 10 feet high, braced with crossbeams from shipyard salvage. Logs chained in pyramids 35 feet tall, secured by turnbuckles that could hoist locomotives. Brakes? Drum setups the size of manhole covers, air over hydraulic. But here's the terror. Stopping power lagged the acceleration. Inertia ruled. 180 tons barreling at 15 mph. A single spongy pedal, the only prayer. Fuel system? Gluttonous veins. Twin 200-gallon tanks per engine, siphoned through baffled lines to starve cavitation on slopes. Cooling? Radiators the size of billboards, fans blade sharp, hurling mudclods like shrapnel. Electrics? Bare bones, magnetos, no alternators fancy enough for two beasts. One short? Darkness mid-haul. This anatomy birthed a titan. The P16, elegant in its V12 simplicity, hauled 100,000 pounds reliably. The Mark V, 160,000 pounds routinely, 200,000 in desperation. Scale it, equivalent to 40 loaded pickups, stacked and chained. First public demo, 1968, Cassidy Lake, logs from a 300-year-old cedar clear-cut. P16 convoy stalled at 22% grade, differential smoking. Butler's monster. Front cat snarling, rear Cummins bellowing discord. Tires bit, planets whirred, chassis groaned, and it crested, shedding mud avalanches. Spectators choked on diesel fog, cheering as black gold rained from stacks. Yet power's price whispered. Vibrations cracked welds after 500 hours. Custom planets wore unevenly, one side digging, the other spinning free. Fuel thirst stranded it 50 miles from yards. But in its prime, the Mark V was godlike. Fleets whispered envy. Pacific car execs paced boardrooms. Butler's Frankenstein didn't just outmuscle the P16. It humiliated it. But anatomy reveals fatal flaws. That dual heart fury, a double-edged sword. As loads grew audacious, the real crucible ignited. Breakdowns in no man's land, where steel met its match in the wild. The climax wasn't a hill. It was Armageddon. Word count, 872. Armageddon struck not in triumph, but in the merciless grind of daily war. The Butler Mark V's first true baptism came winter of 1968. Holberg Inlet, a cauldron of sleet-lashed cliffs and boot-sucking peat. Load, 175,000 pounds of heartwood firs. Crown still dripping sap stacked to eclipse the cab. Driver, grizzled vet named Hank Iron Larson, hands calloused from a decade wrestling P16s. He fired the twin beasts, Caterpillar front lunging with a guttural bellow, Cummins rear coughing black fury. Vibration hit like a sledgehammer, gauges spiked, oil pressure dancing red line. Uphill, 35% grade, switchbacks carved by dynamite. Physics turned assassin. Inertia, that invisible leviathan, conspired with 180 tons of swaying death. Front engine surged, rear lagged a beat. Tires clawed, planetary gears whining in protest, mud erupting in geysers. Then, snap. A turnbuckle sheared under log shift, a 10-ton cedar glancing off the bunk wall. Metal screamed, sparks flew, cab lurched sideways. Larson yanked dual throttles, brakes howling air over hydraulic fury, drums glowing cherry red, smoke billowing like a forest blaze. The beast teetered on a 200-foot drop, roots clawing the edge. Crowd below froze. P16 drivers radioed prayers. Inch by seismic inch, torque prevailed. It straightened, crested, but scarred. Welds cracked, a planet gear chipped like a bad tooth. That was mercy. Summer 69, Quatsino sound. The infamous Black Mud Massacre. Rain-swollen bogs, deeper than a man tall. Mark V loaded to apocalypse. 190,000 pounds, bunk groaning under Sitka spruce felled by high-lead cables. Descent first, gravity's playground. Brakes faded after 2 miles. 15 po became inexorable. Drums overheated, fluid boiled, spongy pedal no bite. Larson downshifted to granny low. Engine screaming at 2,500 RPM, but momentum ruled. Fishtail through hairpin. Rear tandems hydroplaned on diesel-slick clay. Chassis flexing like a bowstring. Collision inevitable. Slammed a berm. Logs avalanche forward, pinning the bumper. Front cat hydrolocked on mud ingestion. Silence, then backfire explosion. Crew winched it free over 18 hours, but the damage? Transmission plates fused, axles twisted. Cost, $12,000, a year's wages. P16 convoy passed unscathed, hauling half the load reliably. Fuel thirst turned predator. Those gluttonous tanks drained at 2 mpg under siege, stranding at mid-haul. One night, Elliott Highway, dual tanks bone dry after 40 miles. Engines starved, glow plugs futile in cold start hell. Larson jury-rigged fuel from a P16 siphon, hoses snaking like veins, but sync failed. Front roared alive, rear sputtered, differential howling in mismatch. Vibration cracked the firewall. Shards peppered Larson's face. Blood mixed with diesel reek. Cab a sauna of 140-degree heat from unbaffled exhaust. Piloting, black magic. No power steering. Just raw hydraulics fighting 50,000 pounds of steer axle. On crowned roads, camber pulled like a riptide. Corrections fishtailed the 40-foot behemoth. Visibility, nil behind 35-foot log pyramids. Mirrors caked. Radio crackling warnings from spotters on ATVs. One haul, 1970. Thermal runaway. Radiators clogged with fir needles. Fans ingesting debris. Coolant boiled, steam erupting like geysers. Front cat seized. Piston ring failed under 40 psi boost. Larson nursed it 20 miles on rear power alone, chassis torque twisting into a pretzel. Shop verdict, $20,000 rebuild. Butler cursed welded reinforcements, but cracks spiderwebbed anew. The wild amplified every flaw. Bear scat on catwalks, wolves shadowing loads. Winters froze lines solid. Grease plugs popped like gunfire. Custom parts? Non-existent. A snapped planet carrier meant helicopter drop or abandonment. Stats whispered doom, 500 hours between major failures versus P16's 5,000. Insurance balked. Mills demanded uptime. Larson quit after 71 breaker. Axle housing split on a stump jump, spilling diff oil like blood. It's a widowmaker, he spat. Power like God, reliability like the devil. Yet amid carnage, glory flickered. Epic 1972. Mount Spencer clear-cut, 210,000 pounds. Record shattered. Slopes defied helicopters. Mark V conquered, engines discordant symphony echoing fjords. But post-run? Totaled. Butler scrapped it piecemeal. Engines to dozers, axles to barges. No photos survive. Witnesses sworn to secrecy. Complexity devoured the beast. Where P-16 fleets logged millions of ton miles, Mark V tallied thousands. Brilliant but brittle. Its Armageddon wasn't one battle, but attrition's slow bleed. Steel bent, but the forests and economics broke it. As Butler's Leviathan faded to ghost story, a deeper truth emerged. In the industrial coliseum, survival trumped supremacy. As Butler's Leviathan faded to ghost story, a deeper truth emerged. In the industrial coliseum, survival trumped supremacy. The Mark V didn't explode in a single cataclysm. No, its demise was a slow, inexorable rusting. Attrition's quiet assassin, gnawing at the edges of ambition until only echoes remained. By 1973, the logging wars shifted. Oil crises choked diesel supplies. Environmental whispers grew to roars. Chainsaws silenced under new regs, clear-cuts reclaimed by alder thickets. The P-16 evolved into legends of its own, rebuilt, repowered, hauling into the 80s with fleets still prowling Vancouver Island. Over 500 built, parts stocked in every mill from Seattle to Prince Rupert. Reliable titans, they logged billions of board feet, their V12 rumble the soundtrack of suburbia's birth. Museums cradle them today. Polished restorations at the BC Forest Discovery Center. Hoods pop to reveal gleaming 12 V71s. School kids gaping at axles that tamed mudslides. The Mark V vanished like smoke from its stacks. Post Mount Spencer, Butler tallied the butcher's bill. Repairs outpaced hauls. $50,000 sunk into a frame that flexed like licorice. Insurers fled. Mills blacklisted the widowmaker. Claude, eyes hollowed by endless nights arc-welding fractures, faced reality. No buyers for a 45-ton headache. In Souk-Yard, under relentless rain-hammering corrugated roofs, he torched it apart. Caterpillar D343 yanked for a D9 dozer rebuild. Its turbo scarred but salvageable. Cummins NT855, shipped to an Alaskan crab boat. Thirst unchanged. Axles? Six-pack tandems bolted to a barge pusher, hauling oil rig modules across Hecate Strait. Chassis steel, melted into rebar for Vancouver high-rises, atoms unknowingly propping condos overlooking the very fjords it conquered. No plaque marks its grave. No serial number in registries. Witnesses scattered. Larson turned trapper. Tales swapped over rye in Holberg taverns. Saw it eat a hill alive, he'd slur, then eat itself. Photos. Burned in a shop fire, 75. Or so the myth goes. Butler died 82, blueprints to ashes in his stove. The beast dissolved, components scattered like shrapnel from a gutted battleship. Yet in erasure, legend bloomed. Whispers in truck stops. Butler built a double-engine devil. Pulled 3 P16s uphill blind. Forums buzz today. Heavyhaulers.net. Threads dissecting phantom specs. Pixel hunting rare Polaroids. A 1980s pulp mag snippet surfaces. Frankenstein flivver of the woods. Grainy sketch only. Enthusiasts hunt relics. A planetary hub in a Kamloops junkyard, stamped Butler custom. Torque marks like war wounds. Replica dreams stir. A Washington fabricator sketches a half-scale twin cats humming for air shows. YouTube dives yield nada. The ghost evades pixels. Why oblivion? Complexity's curse. The P16's genius was mass, standardized, scalable, idiot-proof. Butler's bespoke brutality. One man's fury against physics unreplicable. Fuel at $0.50 gallon? Extravagant. At threat? Suicide. Maintenance? A village of mechanics for one rig. Economics crowned the reliable, not the radical. As synthetics supplanted spruce, helicopters airlifted what haulers once dragged. Roads paved for semis. The era of mud gods ended. Spreadsheets ruled. Today, the Mark V endures as archetype, the forgotten behemoth, cautionary colossus. No restoration gleams in a hangar. Its legacy is absence, a void where power unchecked met market's blade. Parts pulse in anonymous machines. That Cummins propels a Kodiak trawler through bearing gales. Tank-derived axles nudge oil sands crawlers in Alberta. Atoms recycled, fury diffused. In the end, the Butler Mark V teaches eternity's harsh gospel. Industries devour their monsters, forging progress from the wreckage of excess. It was more powerful than the P16. Yes, a thunderclap in timber's symphony. But power without posterity is but a roar in the rain, swallowed by the very wilds it sought to tame. In the Pacific Northwest's emerald cathedrals, where firs reclaim the scars of steel, one truth lingers. The greatest haulers weren't built to last forever. They were built to remind us what impossible once meant. Word count 872.